Hello everyone and welcome to Who Wore It Better, the weekly segment in which I review Raw and Smackdown back to back and try and figure out which show won for the week. Well, you know what? The Royal Rumble, it's done and dusted. It's in the rear view. You're probably still mad about it, but hey, there's still the Elimination Chamber and Fastlane to think about, and then WrestleMania. So there's that. Raw begins with Kevin Owens and Chris Jericho coming out, selling their injuries and their wear and tear from the night before. Good for them. Like, I want to see more selling from the night before. Kevin does some very passionate yelling directed at Mick Foley, proving all the doubters and the haters wrong for retaining the Universal Championship. Chris Jericho puts over the fact that he now holds the record for the most cumulative time spent in Rumble matches. Congratulations to Chris for that. Then out comes Braun Strowman, and it's funny because Strowman is perceived as this big, dumb monster guy, but actually in a rare showing of intelligence, he shows the clip from a month ago where Owens promises Strowman a title match if Kevin Owens retains against Reigns, and he shows the footage that you owe me this title match, and now Owens is backing off. Mick Foley in a ridiculous suit makes the match. The opening segment immediately flows into a match between Chris Jericho and Sami Zayn, two of the hardest workers from the Rumble match the night before. Kudos to those guys for working their butts off in the Rumble match and then doing this really awesome match, probably my favorite match on Raw by far. I feel like the last time these two fought one-on-one was at Clash of Champions late last year when Jericho won that match. I could be wrong. I feel like they've wrestled more recently than that, but be that as it may, this is still a very entertaining match to watch. I love the spot where Sami Zayn was going for two consecutive spots, the haluva kick and then his diving through the turnbuckles to do the tornado DDT spot, and both times Jericho was just running away, and then at one point it became a foot race. The match ends when Sami Zayn hits the exploder suplex in the corner, followed by the haluva kick, and he wins. He pins Jericho 1, 2, 3, clean as a whistle in the middle of the ring. That was kind of a surprise to me, but it's good to see Sami get his win back from Clash of Champions way back then, and now I think this is possibly setting up a US title feud, maybe? Seth Rollins and Stephanie McMahon have their face-to-face segment. This was really just kind of a protracted version, a stretched out version of the backstage stuff they've had on and off over the last several months since the fall when Triple H first interfered and cost Rollins the Universal Championship. Be that as it may, still pretty strong mic work from both people, especially Rollins in this case, because he, at the very least, he still kind of sounds like a real human being. Stephanie is very articulate on the mic, but at the same time, she's very robotic. She's very by the book. She has a very specific language with buzzwords she wants to get across, but she's still very, at least, good at that. But anyway, at the end of the segment, Stephanie reveals that Triple H is on his way to the arena after Seth spent the whole segment calling Triple H a coward and a punk and saying how his legacy is ruined and everything because he's on Stephanie's leash. Pretty strong segment overall, although there is a negative to it, and in fact there's a whole fatal flaw that I have with this segment and the Triple H Seth segment at the end of Raw, which I'll get to later. Cesaro, Sheamus, and Bayley taking on Anderson, Gallows, and Charlotte in 6-person tag team action. Boy, Cesaro and Sheamus are still fighting after losing the tag titles the night before, and they're squabble at the Rumble, but apparently they're still cool enough where they can do their tandem tag entrance still. The women were kind of a non-issue in this match, I felt, until the very end when there was a hot tag when Bayley vaults off of Cesaro's back onto Charlotte, and then after Cesaro takes this big scary fall off the top rope onto all the guys on the outside, Bayley hits the belly to belly on Charlotte and wins. So once again, she beats the champion on television, not on pay-per-view, not a non-title situation, which is kind of the theme here. And also there's the very similar thing happened the next night on SmackDown, which again, I'll get into that in a minute, but that's how that match ended. The coronation for King Neville. They changed the color of the ropes and the canvas just for a promo segment. Neville comes out, talks some trash. Rich Swann comes out and offers to shake his hand to Neville, says you're the better man. Neville says you have to bow and kneel before your king, and Swann and he have a bit of a scuffle. Swann hits him with a big fly move on the outside. There's this big fight going on between the two top cruiserweights in the division, and no one cares. The crowd was just totally dead silent for the whole thing. They were dead silent for the Tony Nese Mustafa Ali match earlier as well. Boy, it's almost as if they don't really put a whole lot of effort into promoting the cruiserweights on Raw, so the fans don't care. Universal Championship on the line as Kevin Owens defends against Braun Strowman. Gosh, the way that the Universal title match ended at the Rumble, I wonder how this is going to end up. First few minutes of the match was Kevin Owens getting the piss beat out of him by Braun Strowman. It's probably the most one-sided I've seen a match between Kevin Owens and another opponent. He does eventually get his heat back. He gets out of the way of Strowman a little bit. He dodges a big bullet from Strowman, hits him with a cannonball on the floor on the outside, and just basically he gets a few moves back in, but he gets caught and he's hit with a running power slam by Strowman, but then a wild Reigns appears. Reigns gets Kevin Owens DQ'd by hitting Strowman with a couple of Superman punches, a big spear on the outside from the top of the stairs into Strowman. That was kind of, the spear itself, that was kind of a cool spot, but Strowman gets up pretty soon after that. He's showing his invincibility and his resilience, that sort of thing. And The thing with Roman Reigns, a lot of people are pissed about Roman Reigns at number 30, and I get that. I was upset about it too. I think, honestly, I just think that we as fan base are being punished for 2015. Because if you remember how Roman Reigns is getting built up, everyone hated that. From the Rumble to WrestleMania, he was basically going to be anointed the guy to beat Brock Lesnar and win the championship, but the fans pissed on it and they just hated it so much that they called an audible at the end and gave the belt to Rollins. I feel like if they just stuck to their guns and gave Roman the belt at WrestleMania 31, we would have been saved from so much crap. You know, it still would have been a drag, but at least they would have got it out of their system. But now that they had to wait a whole other year to WrestleMania 32 to finally have Roman Reigns' WrestleMania moment, and it still went badly. Now they're still trying to, like, you know, they're just trying to pound it into you, and they're just trying to, like, figure out, this is gonna work, damn it. Like, they're sticking with Roman Reigns through thick and thin. And, you know, I think that if they had just stuck to their guns at 31 and got out of their system, it would have been okay. And I think things would have gone back to normal and things would have been more enjoyable. But now it's like they're just almost out of spite, almost just to troll the fans to an insane degree. He did lose twice on Sunday, so there is some solace there. Paul Heyman and Brock Lesnar come out, an awesome promo by Paul Heyman. I think his stuff with Goldberg over the last couple of months has not been his strongest work, but I feel like this one was especially strong. I love the fact that he was able to take like a simple point or a simple word or a phrase and just make a whole promo around that tiny nucleus, the yeah but. Like his whole yeah but promo was awesome. I think if you are a worker or someone who does on-air speaking in wrestling or just in acting in general, any kind of thing like that, any kind of field, and you can make a whole speech, make a whole promo based on one tiny thing and make it work and make it just sound captivating and like money drawing, then I think you're golden. Anyway, the inevitable happened. Brock Lesnar via Paul Heyman makes a challenge to Goldberg for a match at WrestleMania one more time. Goldberg, of course, is going to accept next week in Raw in Portland, Oregon. I kind of wish I was back in my hometown for that show. Sasha Banks versus Nia Jax in a rematch from Sunday. It's more of the same, only more so. Sasha's just broken in half, bent over backwards by Nia Jax in this brutal looking submission hold. The bell rings prematurely, which I felt was weird. It's like I thought, oh my god, is Bayley ringing the bell for Sasha? Is like throwing in the towel? No, just the ring person fucked up. Bayley comes out and makes the save and just keeps Nia Jax away from Sasha Banks. Nia is looking more dominant and more dangerous than ever before. And in this world we're living in with the Raw Women's Division, where it's getting kind of stale, it's good to have someone look so dominant, look like such a threat. You know, I don't know when they're going to pull the trigger on her being champion or being a main level woman on the Raw Women's Division just yet, but I mean, they're building quite a resume for her. Handsome Rusev and Jinder Mahal taking on Enzo and Cass in a tornado tag. I'm kind of surprised that they had this match, considering a few weeks ago they already had their tag team match. I thought that was the end of it, but they brought it back for this one. How ironic is it that they're doing this Handsome Rusev thing and they're sticking with it like the week right after he breaks his nose in a match? Enzo and Cass did a really entertaining promo at the top of their match. Again, like I said, if you can take a one concept in a promo and just build a whole thing around it and they make it work, I think it's hilarious. I thought their whole thing with the Wizard of Oz stuff was great. It's just too bad the crowd didn't give a shit about it. Anyway, after a fast-paced match that went all over the place, Enzo and Cass win again, which I think should officially end the rivalry. In a closing segment, they kind of rendered the whole thing with Seth and Stephanie from earlier kind of redundant and unnecessary. Triple H comes out to finally talk about Seth Rollins and everything. Triple H, I will say, had a really, really cool promo, and I loved his whole story and his whole motivation. Saying, like, I'm trying so hard not to be that guy, but Stephanie has me on the leash, so I put on the suit and I do this thing. But Seth, you know, you're crossing the line when you get in NXT. I love that stuff, but here's a problem with the Triple H thing and what Stephanie said as well. Here's the big fatal flaw in all this. And then this is something very similar to when Triple H feuded with Randy Orton for the first time over a decade ago. The mark of a good heel is when the heel believes they are right. And not necessarily objectively are correct, but when they 100% believe they are in the right. I think that makes a great heel, and that works. But it's a whole other thing when the heel actually is right. Because what you had with Triple H and what you had with Stephanie was they basically said, with us, you were something. Without us, you're nothing. You suck. You lose all your matches. You lose all your title opportunities. You're terrible without us. And like, yeah, they're actually correct. You know, that's a terrible thing because when the heel is 100% right, it makes it very difficult to root against them. It makes it very difficult to root for the face in that situation. What's Seth Rollins going to say in response? Oh, yeah, well, phew. Not to mention in 2017, it's very difficult for Triple H to be a heel because, you know, we all know he's behind NXT and we all love NXT, ergo, we all love Triple H. So when you combine that with the fact that Triple H H is 100% correct in what he says, and that Stephanie is 100% correct in what she says about Seth Rollins, how without him, without them, he is nothing, then yeah, that's pretty much an open and shut case. I don't know how Rollins can recover from that come WrestleMania time, but Triple H did the exact same thing when he kicked Randy Orton out of Evolution. Basically, he said, when you were with Evolution, you were, the Intercontinental Champion, you were bred for stardom, and you're going to be somebody, and now without me, that you're fighting against me, boy, you sure do suck. And like that, I think really took a lot of the piss out of Randy Orton's face turn, because they really exposed him. It's like, hey, he does kind of suck. Okay, well, let's not cheer him. That's the exact same thing they're doing with Seth Rollins, who is already very difficult to get behind as a babyface because of his motivations. And now they're just like doing the dirt, putting the dirt on top of him. It's not a good look. But the real redeeming portion of this whole segment, the thing that everyone's talking about, is at the very end, Seth Rollins comes down to confront Triple H after that big promo, and who shows up? The guy who didn't show up at the Rumble and pissed so many people off in his absence was Samoa Joe. Samoa Joe comes barreling in, clocks Rollins, beats the crap out of him. Triple H just walks away, doesn't even stomp Rollins or nothing, just walks off. So this sets up the feud with Seth Rollins and Samoa Joe. Don't you feel happier now, Internet? Don't you feel happier now? Yeah, sure. Samoa Joe didn't get in the Rumble, but if he got in the Rumble, he probably wouldn't have won anyway. It's the same thing with AJ Styles last year, so you're almost setting yourself up disappointment there. But now, Samoa Joe comes right in the night after the Rumble, and he's immediately put in this main event thing against the top babyface in the company with big air quotes, not quite as big air quotes as Roman Reigns as the top babyface, but you get what I'm saying. Anyway, Samoa Joe comes out, he makes a big impact on his first night out. He's Triple H's, he's Triple H's bulldog, and he's going to be attacking Seth Rollins. I don't think he's going to win at Fastlane when they're probably going to feud, but I think it's still going to be a good opening salvo for Samoa Joe. Over on SmackDown, after Shane and Daniel Bryan announced who's going to be in the Elimination Chamber match in 2 weeks, boy, there's a bit of a breakneck speed to try and build that match up, this big feud ender in the Elimination Chamber. Anyway, John Cena, the new champion, comes out to address the crowd. He puts over AJ Styles in a major way. Bray Wyatt and Randy Orton interrupt John Cena. Bray declares he's going to be the one winning at the Elimination Chamber, and Orton follows up by saying even if Cena survives the chamber, he still has to go through Randy Orton at WrestleMania. Maybe some possible foreshadowing, maybe not, we'll see. Anyway, Bray and Randy, they start cornering John Cena in the ring. Luke Harper, even though he's not with the family anymore, he still has the key card or the badge or whatever that makes him teleport in and out of arenas. So there he is, he shows up, he has John Cena's back. Shane McMahon comes out and makes a tag team match right there and there. Shane McMahon, 47 years old and wearing a belt buckle of a dollar bill. Kind of gaudy in my opinion. Then again, I'm a 31-year-old man wearing velour tracksuit, so I guess I can't talk. So it's the tag team match, Cena and Harper, the unlikely duo against Bray Wyatt and Randy Orton. Very interesting to Harper, the story they're telling here that Luke Harper wouldn't fight Bray Wyatt, wouldn't put hands on Bray Wyatt. This despite the fact he had no problem doing that at the Royal Rumble just 2 nights ago. So basically it's 2-on-1 against Cena for a while until finally Harper comes in. He teases the Sister Abigail to Bray Wyatt. One day he's going to hit that and the crowd's going to go nuts. He goes for the Sister Abby, but instead he boots Randy Orton. He gets hit with Sister Abby by Bray Wyatt, and then Randy Orton hits John Cena with the RKO and pins Cena 1, 2, 3. On the one hand, that makes the RKO look like this devastating move. All it took was one RKO to put John Cena away. At the same time, though, it kind of makes AJ Styles look weak. I mean, people have been arguing for the last couple of days, oh, Styles got buried at the Rumble. In the match itself, it wasn't a burial. I think, and the way that Cena put him over in the promo, it's not a burial. But this, in particular, to me, felt like the most burying kind of act. The fact that it took one RKO to put John Cena away in this tag team match that didn't seem nearly as strenuous as the title match on Sunday, whereas Styles hit him with everything in the book and still couldn't put him away. That to me is more of an indictment toward, Styles and kind of a burial for him than anything else people have mentioned. James Ellsworth is now dressed like Slam Master Jay. He introduces Carmella. He and Carmella do the skip together, which I thought that was the thing I laughed at the most between both nights. You get all the gold stars to go with your gold pants, James Ellsworth, good job. In a very similar vein to a few weeks ago when Carmella took on Thunder Kitty, this is Delilah Dawson, the latest local talent to be fed to Carmella here. And it's a very similar setup, very similar story told here. James Ellsworth gets the cheap shot in on Delilah Dawson, and Carmella hits with the Code of Silence, and that's pretty much it. And again, in a very similar vein to the last jobber match that Carmella had, JBL just spent the entire time making fun of the jobber and James Ellsworth, like nonstop. He pretty much hijacked the entire segment, which on one end is kind of funny, but at the same time, kind of sad. Kalisto versus Dolph Ziggler, who I almost forgot was even in the Royal Rumble match this past Sunday. These two had a match last week that ended very quickly. This one was slightly more competitive, but the same result, Dolph Ziggler winning with the super kick, going to attack Kalisto some more, going for the mask. Apollo Crews comes out and makes the save and runs Dolph Ziggler off. the exact same thing that happened from last week, almost a carbon copy. Naomi and Becky Lynch taking on Mickie James and Alexa Bliss in tag team action. There was a funny moment just for me as an observer watching this match where it's like, I thought this was the hot tag where Becky gets tagged in and just wails on Mickie James, like boom, 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 big move after big move. I thought this was the hot tag, and then, oh, we're going to commercial. Like, oh, so this is the pre-commercial hot tag. There's going to be one later on, I guess. Turns out Becky's the one who wound up getting all the heat. Then she tags in Naomi, who gets an even bigger hot tag. I thought that was really good stuff, and really good storytelling in this match too. Good job by the heels, Alexa and Mickie, just cutting off Becky Lynch every chance they got, really working her over while Naomi was in the corner just chomping at the bit to get in. Finally, Naomi does get in. She beats Alexa Bliss again, the second time in 3 days. So now Naomi is firmly in place to be challenging Alexa for the Women's Championship, presumably at Elimination Chamber. But this whole thing, I was alluding to in the Raw portion of this review with Charlotte and Bayley, we're getting these two concurrent storylines now in the female divisions, and this is a trope that's been going on for a long time. I'm just finally now just getting sick to death of, is the whole thing where the entire basis of a storyline is, oh, the challenger is beating the champion in these non-title matches on TV, and then when it comes to the title match, oh, the champion always finds a way to pull through. I feel like it's gotten so repetitive now, especially now that we're seeing these concurrent angles, like I'm saying. There's got to be some other kind of way you can build a championship matchup in the mid-card and not have it be just this whole thing where the champion is devalued by losing all the time on television to a challenger only to squeak out at the very end. It's all champions are kind of like this in a way. There's got to be some way in this era we live in, and I know it's just a byproduct of the whole ratings war from the late 90s and how, well, you know, it's no longer can you have just like jobber matches and squash matches with champions. You got to have star versus star all the time, and that's kind of how we've gotten to this point. But there's got to be some way to keep the champions apart while still having good investment and good build toward title matches without giving the matches away in tag formats or other kind of things, and just having the champion lose the challenger all the time on free television. There's got to be a new way to do that. I don't know what the solution is. Maybe you could post your solutions in the comment section below, because it's driving me crazy. American Alpha shows up. They're only the tag team champions of SmackDown. They come out and they say, well, you know, no one's, since we've won the titles and won the rematch against the Wyatts, nobody has stepped up to challenge us for the belts. What gives? So we're going to do an open challenge. And so then all the tag teams on SmackDown come out and they try to answer the open challenge. It's weird, because if that's the case, what was preventing all these teams from stepping up and challenging them before that, and what motivated them to all come out at once after the open challenge was made? I feel like what they did was that they spent the last several weeks just totally ignoring the tag division on SmackDown, so this week they just unkinked the hose. It's like, here's all the tag teams, just go, do something. So they have this big brawl and it doesn't go anywhere. There's no, like, you have like American Alpha and like Team Slater and Rhino in the ring together, but they're not fighting. They didn't win the sweepstakes to get the open challenge, or maybe they did for next week, I don't know, but like, it's gonna be, yeah, so it's just kind of this weird non-issue where it's like they were simply addressing the problem exists is not the same as fixing it. They advertised for next week John Cena versus Randy Orton. Never happened before in the history of this iteration of SmackDown under the new brand split, so technically it's correct. I may be wrong here, but I think the fact that they are giving this match away now, like weeks before Mania, leads me to believe that this is not the match you're going to see at WrestleMania. Like, I think a lot of people are saying, oh my god, Cena Orton again for the title at WrestleMania. I don't think it's going to go that way. I think there's still several weeks where something may change. I think Randy Orton's still going to be involved, but I question if Cena will still be. So I think there's a lot that can change between now and Mania, and I think the fact they're giving this match away now on TV, unless they're totally stupid and give away what could be their co-main event for free a couple of months in advance, I just don't see them. I mean, they've done some dumb stuff before, but I can't imagine they'd be that dumb. Main event time as Dean Ambrose takes on AJ Styles in Unfinished Business from TLC. Before the match starts, you see The Miz joining on commentary. So there's 5 people at the commentary table, 6 if you include Maurice, but she doesn't talk, so she's not really a factor in this. The 2 in the ring have a fundamentally sound match for the first part. Ambrose is going to the top rope after Styles is knocked out. Then who comes up? Baron Corbin shows up, goes to the announce table. There's 6 people at this announce table. Jesus Christ, calm down a bit. And really the whole interplay between Miz and Corbin at the announce table and the 4 people in between them really takes away from what was a pretty good match. I mean, the Miz-Corbin thing, Miz was just taking the piss out of Corbin, fellow heel. Like, Miz was just getting all these barbs in on Corbin. All Corbin could do was just sit there and go, yeah, well, NFL Duh. But the match itself between Ambrose and Styles was great. I mean, you see these two in the ring. They've been feuding since Backlash last year, and even then, like from then to now, the quality has remained consistently good. I love the sequence where, you know, they counter each other's big moves. Like Styles is going phenomenal forearm, Ambrose hits him, throws him out. He goes to the suicide dive, and Styles hits him. Great stuff back and forth. The match ends as Miz and Corbin finally come to blows outside, and they brawl their way into the ring. The referee gets distracted. Dean Ambrose goes out there and cleans both their clocks. He gets back in the ring. Styles hits him with a Styles Clash and wins the match. Gets a little bit of heat back after losing the title on Sunday to John Cena. As that all happens, Corbin comes in and hits the Miz and Dean Ambrose, both with End of Days, stands tall as one of the 6 competitors in the Elimination Chamber match. Fade to black. Time now for me to decide who wore it better for the week, Raw or SmackDown. You know, the last couple of weeks I gave Raw the nod because I felt they were doing just enough over those 3 hours to keep me entertained throughout, whereas I thought SmackDown was kind of on cruise control going into the Royal Rumble, mostly because of the amount of like how the brands were weighted in the pay-per-view. I'm gonna give SmackDown the win this week. I feel like Raw had a lot of good points. I love the Jericho-Zayn match. I loved the Paul Heyman promo. And of course, Samoa Joe debuting on the Raw roster. That was really cool to see. The pacing of the previous weeks I thought was doing okay, but this one just dragged going into the final hour. I thought the thing with Stephanie and Seth was redundant after what they did with Triple H and Seth. I thought the fact that, you know, Triple H had a great promo, but at the same time, he and Stephanie shot so many holes into the Seth Rollins face boat that the boat is sinking, and I just think that it just exposed this whole fatal flaw in the whole feud to begin with, and that is a huge blow to me. And the crowd in Laredo just plain sucked. I know it's not really fair to judge the quality of a show by the volume of a crowd, but it does help. If a crowd is into a show, then I think it makes the show that much, you know, it makes it a little more exciting, because if they're excited, well, gosh, I must be excited too. But if the crowd is especially dead, it just, like, you feel the death. You feel the cold death, you know, glomming onto you through the television screen. So overall, I think Raw this week it had some good points, not as strong as it could have been though. Meanwhile, SmackDown had a lot of things I liked. I liked the cross-threading angles between Cena and Orton and Wyatt and Harper. Where's all this going to end up in 2 weeks, let alone to WrestleMania time? I'm very curious to see where that goes. I thought the women's tag team match delivered in a big way to me. I loved the Ambrose and Styles match, even though the stuff with the announce team and the 6-7 friggin' people at the table really took a lot away from the focus of what was a pretty good match in my estimation. I thought that the Kalisto Dolph Ziggler match and the Carmella Jobber match were too much of carbon copies, not Corbin copies, carbon copies from previous weeks, so that was kind of a ding for me. But overall, I think SmackDown had a more solid show, and I think they did a much better job building toward Elimination Chamber than Raw did toward Fastlane. So let me know what you thought about Raw and SmackDown in the comments section below, and don't forget to vote for which show you thought won for the week in the poll right here in the corner of your screen. Quick programming note, next week's Who Wore It Better segment is going to be pushed back by a couple of days, probably Friday is what I'm shooting for. I will not be able to watch Raw or SmackDown live or even the next day next week, so I have to watch it later in the week, which means Who Wore It Better, which is still going to happen, just going to be a couple of days past what it normally does. So I thank you for your patience in advance. Be sure to thumbs up this video if you like it, subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, and buy the t-shirts at ProWrestlingTees.com. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.